In 1907, the Shanghai Municipal Police handled more violent incidents per square mile than any law enforcement body on the planet. The city's waterfront district, known as the Bund, was the crossroads of every criminal network, every opium operation, every knife gang and dock racket in Asia. Officers did not patrol it in pairs. They went in and dealt with whatever they found. One constable, a young Englishman named William Ewart Fairbairn, was attacked in that district so many times in his first years of service that the Shanghai Municipal Police eventually stopped counting the incidents and started counting the days he survived them, by his own account, and by police records of the era he was involved in hundreds of violent confrontations over nearly 3 decades. He was stabbed, he was beaten. He fought alone against groups in alleys and warehouses and gambling dens at 2 in the morning, with no backup and no radio. He did not just survive. He built a system out of every fight he lost and every fight he won. That system went on to train the men who ran behind enemy lines in Nazi-occupied Europe. This is the story of William Fairbairn. Welcome to Marshall Road, where warriors live forever. Channel membership is now open. Link in the description. If you've seen our video on the OSS Silent Killing Manual, you already know what Fairbairn built. This video is about who he was and how a British constable in Shanghai became the most influential hand-to-hand combat instructor of the Second World War. 3 phases define his life: Shanghai, where he learned, Britain and North America, where he taught, and the war itself, where everything he had built was tested by men who had no margin for error. William Ewart Fairbairn was born in Rickmansworth, Hertfordshire, England, in 1885. He joined the Royal Marine Light Infantry at 16. By his early 20s, he had transferred to the Shanghai Municipal Police, a joint British and international body that policed one of the most densely populated and violently contested cities in Asia. Shanghai in the early 20th century was not a metaphor. It was a real place where 3 criminal organizations operated openly, where opium moved through the same warehouses as legitimate cargo, where a constable responding to a disturbance in the Bund district might face 6 men armed with dock hooks and knives before his shift ended. The city's murder rate in certain periods exceeded that of Chicago at the height of Prohibition. Fairbairn's response to this environment was methodical. He sought out training wherever he could find it. He studied judo and was awarded a 2nd-degree black belt in Kodokan Judo, one of the few Western officers of his era to achieve that rank. He trained in Chinese boxing systems. He studied knife defense with teachers from communities that had carried blade traditions for generations. And every technique he learned, he tested not in competition, but in the streets he was responsible for policing. What he discovered was that formal martial arts techniques, however refined, frequently failed against the kind of violence the Shanghai docks produced. An attacker who was drunk, enraged, or simply committed to killing you did not behave like a training partner. The compliance that made techniques work in the dojo was absent. The adrenaline that degraded fine motor control was present in full. So Fairbairn began stripping systems down. He kept what worked in conditions of genuine resistance and genuine fear. He discarded what didn't. Over the course of nearly 3 decades, he assembled through experience that no training manual could replicate, a curriculum built entirely on what he had verified would function when a man's hands were shaking, and a second opponent was moving in from the left. By the time he left Shanghai in 1940, he had risen to Assistant Commissioner of Police. He had also co-developed a close-quarters combat system with his colleague Eric Sykes, a former Shanghai police officer and marksman, that would become the most influential fighting curriculum of the Second World War. That knife, the one bearing his name, was already in production. What came next was the curriculum that told men how to use it. The system Fairbairn formalized is documented in 2 primary sources. Defendu, published in 1926, a civilian law enforcement manual developed from his SMP service, and Get Tough, published in 1942, the military adaptation that stripped away even the last restraints of the civilian version, and produced a curriculum with one explicit purpose: to make an untrained civilian capable of killing a trained soldier in the shortest time possible. Get Tough is a short book, deliberately short. Fairbairn's foundational principle, documented across his own writings, was that complexity was the enemy of execution under stress. He had watched officers freeze on technique. He had experienced it himself. The body under extreme adrenal load loses access to fine motor patterns. A man who had drilled 20 techniques would, at the moment of crisis, be unable to recall any of them clearly. So Get Tough taught approximately a dozen techniques total, not 10 ranked by difficulty, not a progression from beginner to advanced. 12 techniques selected because they were gross motor movements, driven by large muscle groups that do not degrade under adrenaline, and because each one targeted areas of the human body, where even a partially executed strike produced incapacitating results. The edge of hand blow, the chin jab, a palm heel strike driven upward under the chin, with the full body weight behind it, the knee to the groin, the tiger's claw to the face. These were not elegant. Fairbairn was explicit in his writing that elegance was irrelevant. What mattered was whether a technique still worked when the man using it had been awake for 30 hours and was being shot at. In late 1940, working with Eric Sykes, Fairbairn began designing a knife. The first production batch was ordered that November and entered service the following year. Not a combat knife in the conventional sense, not a heavy blade intended for utility work. A killing instrument, specifically engineered for the conditions of clandestine warfare. Double-edged, slim enough to be concealed in a boot or under a jacket, with a foil grip that allowed precise control in a thrust even with wet or cold hands. The Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife was issued to British commandos, to SOE agents, and to American OSS operatives. Hundreds of thousands were produced during the war. It remains in production today, and is still issued to certain British Special Forces units more than 80 years. After Fairbairn and Sykes drew the original specifications, the knife is the most visible artifact of what Fairbairn built. But the curriculum mattered more. The men who trained under Fairbairn were not soldiers. They were the people the war recruited from everywhere else, and what he did with them in 6 weeks changed what special operations warfare looked like. When Britain stood up the Special Operations Executive in 1940, Churchill's directive to set Europe ablaze, the organization faced an immediate problem. It was recruiting civilians, accountants, school teachers, radio operators, journalists, people who had no combat training of any kind, who were being asked to operate behind enemy lines in occupied Europe, to blow up bridges and railway lines and ammunition depots, and to survive contact with the Gestapo. They had at most a few weeks of training before insertion. There was no time to produce soldiers. What Fairbairn understood and what the SOE's training establishment at Station 17 in Hertfordshire operationalized was that you did not need to produce soldiers. You needed to produce people who could deal with one critical moment of close quarters violence, well enough to survive it and continue their mission. The Fairbairn curriculum was built exactly for that window. 6 weeks of training, 12 techniques, and crucially, the psychological preparation that Fairbairn considered as important as the physical techniques. He trained agents not just in what to do, but in the mental permission to do it. He had spent 3 decades in Shanghai understanding that the hesitation to act, the civilian instinct to de-escalate, to wait, to avoid, was the thing that got people killed, in the fraction of a second before they could correct it. Across the Atlantic, Fairbairn performed the same function for the American OSS. He trained at Camp X in Ontario, a combined British-American facility, and at various sites in the United States. The OSS manual for close quarters combat drew directly from his methods. The lineage runs forward from there, to Rex Applegate, who adapted Fairbairn's work for the American military, to the modern combatives curricula, used by special operations units today. Legend has it that among the figures who passed through Camp X during the war was a British naval intelligence officer named Ian Fleming, and that what Fleming observed there found its way, years later, into the habits of a fictional agent he created. That connection is disputed by historians and cannot be confirmed, but it is not difficult to believe. Before we get to the final section, channel membership is open, 2 tiers. The inner circle, loyalty badges, custom emoji and comments, member shoutouts, and members-only shorts that never go on the main feed. The War Council, everything in the inner circle, plus 24 to 48-hour early access before public release. Members-only polls deciding what we cover next, and priority comment replies on every upload. Join link is in the description. If you've been here a while, this is how you go deeper. Now, the legacy. William Fairbairn retired after the war. He received no public recognition proportionate to what he had contributed. There was no biography published in his lifetime. His name was not widely known outside the special operations community and a small circle of martial arts historians. He died in 1960, 75 years old in relative obscurity, while the curriculum he had built was still being taught in classified military training programs. That bore no public trace of its origin. The system he created has never disappeared. What Fairbairn distilled from 30 years of Shanghai police work and 4 years of wartime instruction flows through every serious close-quarters combat curriculum in use today in British Special Forces, in American Special Operations, in the combatives programs of a dozen other military establishments. The names have changed, the manuals have been revised, but the underlying philosophy, simplicity, gross motor mechanics, psychological permission, is his. The Fairbairn-Sykes Knife is still in production. The principles of Get Tough are still in print, and the question Fairbairn spent his entire career answering, what does a technique need to be to still work when everything has gone wrong, is still the right question. No one before him had answered it with as much evidence. If you want to go deeper on the system he built, the manual, the techniques, the OSS connection, that video is on the channel. Link in the description. Tell us in the comments which part of Fairbairn's story surprised you most. And if you've trained in any system that traces back to his work, tell us that too. Stay strong, stay informed. Subscribe to Marshall Road.